I didn't ask where you're going. Where were you? We just came from a birthday dinner, sir, heading straight home.
It's the truth, officer.
Stay put. Birthday dinner where? Rosario's on 5th, county's main street. Been there a dozen times. Is that your sister in the passenger seat? That's my wife. 2 years. The rings are right there. Interesting. Let me see your license. Sir, you have a weapon pointed at my face. I said, let me see your license. Both of you, out of the car, right now. I'm not coming out! You don't have a warrant! I said stop!
Not right. The call is time-stamped. It was received by Noble Wright's own department while he was still behind their car. Wright had no idea it was happening. That 38-minute recording is the reason he is serving 30 years. And Maria Jones still drives County Road 7. If you believe that a badge should follow the same law it carries, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Drop your location in the comments. This story is moving and I want to know where you are watching from. This is what happened on County Road 7 in Caldwell County, Texas, on a Saturday night in October. The weapon came through the driver's window before the stop had fully settled, before the dust off the shoulder had risen and fallen, before either of them had completely processed that the lights in the rear view were for them. Not a flashlight. Not a standard approach. A weapon, already drawn, already leveled, pointed directly at Eric Jones's face in the amber wash of the highway lights while the car was still registering what had pulled it to the shoulder. The command that followed was loud with the particular overcorrection of a man whose voice had learned to project authority while the rest of him was working against that projection. Both of them. Out of the car. Right now. Eric did not move immediately. Not resistance, recalibration. The half-second a person needs when something arrives is so wrong, so outside the geometry of what a Saturday night is supposed to contain, that the body cannot immediately accept the instructions the brain is sending. Caldwell County sat flat and dark under an October sky. The road between the county's main street and the highway home was the kind of road that had asked nothing of the people who drove it in the years that Eric and Maria had lived here. No blind curves. No accident history. Nothing that distinguished 1 mile of it from the next. Eric had driven it every weekend for 4 years. He knew it the way he knew the route from their front door to the kitchen in the dark, automatically, without thought, without the need to pay it any particular attention. Eric Jones was 36. He had taken his brother to Rosario's on 5th for a birthday dinner, reservation, good table, the kind of evening that carries its own warmth when everyone in the room has been in the same room enough times that conversation arrives without effort. Maria, 32, his wife of 3 years, sat in the passenger seat with her jacket on her lap and the particular ease of someone coming home from a night that had gone exactly right. They were not speeding. The plates were clean. The registration was current. There was no reason the lights in the rearview mirror should have been for them. Noble Wright had held his shoulder position for 35 minutes. He ran their plates when they passed. The plates came back clean. He pulled out anyway and fell in behind them at the intersection before the water tower, following for less than a quarter mile before the lights activated. He reached the driver's window not with a flashlight but with a weapon already drawn, the posture not of a man approaching a stop but of a man arriving at a determination he had already made. His approach was slightly overcorrected, the careful, effortful steadiness of someone monitoring their own movement. When Eric lowered the window, the smell arrived before the question did. Whiskey, not faint, not the residual trace of an earlier hour, but present and direct in the cold October air coming off the man standing at the window with a loaded weapon pointed at the face of a person who had come from a birthday dinner and done nothing wrong. Eric provided his license without being asked twice. Wright studied it for a beat that extended past the time the task required. Then he asked where Eric had been that night. Eric told him. Wright asked the same question again, not a follow-up, the identical question, as if the answer had not reached him or had dissolved somewhere in the space between Eric's voice and his comprehension. Then the weapon moved slightly and Wright asked if the woman in the passenger seat was Eric's sister. She was his wife. 3 years. The rings were visible in the light coming through the window. Maria looked at Eric. Eric looked at the road ahead. The engine was running. The highway beyond the shoulder was straight and dark and empty in both directions. Wright said something else. The body cam captured it. The words arrived slightly collapsed into each other, and his free hand moved toward the door handle on the outside of the vehicle, not a gesture, an attempt, the reaching of a man who had decided what happened next without consulting the law that governed whether he was permitted to decide it. Maria's voice when it came was not loud. It was the opposite of loud, flat and controlled, the register of a person who had run every variable available to her in the last 45 seconds and arrived at a single, clear conclusion. The man at the window smelled like a bar. He had a loaded weapon pointed at her husband's face. He was asking questions that did not hold together on a road with no witnesses in either direction, and he had just attempted to open their door from the outside without cause, without instruction, without any legal foundation that the law he was supposed to represent could support. She told Eric to go. Not a suggestion. Don't panic. A conclusion, stated in the flat, complete voice of someone who had correctly identified every variable in a situation she had not asked to be placed in and had decided, with the total precision that the situation required, what the only available response was. Eric hesitated. The hesitation lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4, long enough to understand that the alternative was still there, that staying, waiting, complying, trusting that the situation would resolve itself through the channels that situations were supposed to resolve through, was still technically available as a choice. And then it wasn't. The car pulled from the shoulder and back onto County Road 7. 2 people putting distance between themselves and something that had been wrong from the moment the weapon came through the window. No drama. No sudden acceleration. Just a car returning to the road it had every right to be on, driven by a man who had done nothing to justify the weapon that was now, behind them, being carried back to a cruiser by a man whose blood alcohol content, as the toxicology report would confirm 3 weeks later, registered at 0.19, nearly 5 times the threshold any law enforcement agency in the state of Texas permitted for an officer on active duty. Maria reached for her phone before the shoulder had cleared the rear window. She did not call Eric's brother, still at the table at Rosario's. She did not call her own family. She did not call anyone who would answer with comfort or questions or the instinct to tell her it would be all right. She called 911. The call connected within seconds. And Maria Jones, in the passenger seat of a car accelerating away from a weapon on a dark Texas highway, began to build the record that a courtroom would one day find irrefutable, in a voice that did not waver once, for 38 minutes. While Noble Wright's cruiser closed the distance behind them and the road ahead ran straight and dark toward the 4 locations where he would raise his weapon and make 4 separate choices that he would spend the next 30 years accounting for. He did not know the call was happening. His own dispatch was logging it in real time while he was behind them. That is the fact the defense could never reach around. That is the reason he is serving 30 years. The road ahead was dark and straight. Maria was already talking. The amber lights of Caldwell County moved past the windows. And the 38 minutes that would become the most consequential recording in the county's legal history had already begun. Rosario's on 5th closed its kitchen at 10 on Saturdays, but the table had stayed warm well past 9, the particular, unhurried quality of a meal that has moved through its courses and arrived at the stage where no one is looking at the time and the conversation has found its own level. Eric's younger brother Marcus had turned 32 that week, and the dinner had been Eric's idea, the reservation made 3 weeks in advance at a restaurant the family had been going to long enough that the owner knew their order before they sat down. The kind of place where the bill came in a leather folder and the evening ended with everyone agreeing they should do this more often and meaning it. Maria had worn the green dress. Eric had noticed when she came downstairs and said so, and she had accepted the compliment with the particular ease of a woman who had been married long enough that the noticing still meant something and the saying so meant more. They had driven to the restaurant together and sat beside each other rather than across, the way they did when the table was round, and the evening had been what good evenings are, present, unforced, the kind of ordinary that feels like abundance when you are inside it. It was 10:23 when they left the restaurant. The air outside was cold and clear in the specific way of Texas October nights that carry summer's memory in the afternoon and release it completely after dark. Eric held the car door. Maria got in and took her jacket off her lap and set it on the back seat and settled into the passenger seat with the ease of someone whose body knows this particular car, this particular seat, this particular route home well enough that the settling is automatic. The radio came on low. The county's main street moved past the windows and gave way to the access road and then to the highway and then to County Road 7, which ran flat and straight and dark between the town and the subdivision where they had lived for 4 years. Eric drove the way he drove every road he knew by heart, without thinking about it, which is the particular freedom that familiarity provides. He knew County Road 7 the way he knew the distance between his front door and his kitchen in the dark. He had driven it in rain and in heat and at every hour the county's weekend offered, and it had never once asked him anything he was not prepared to give. It was just the road home. On a Saturday night that had gone exactly right, it was the last unremarkable thing between them and a house where the lights were on a timer and the leftovers from Thursday were still in the refrigerator and there was nothing left to do but arrive. They were not speeding. The plates were clean. The registration was current. There was no reason the lights in the rearview mirror should have been for them. They were. Noble Wright had held his shoulder position for 35 minutes when their car passed. He ran the plates before they cleared the quarter mile. The return came back clean, registered, current, no flags, no warrants, nothing that the law required him to act on. He pulled out anyway, falling in behind them at the point where County Road 7 straightened after the water tower, and he followed for less than a quarter mile before the lights activated. The approach to the driver's window was not the approach of a man conducting a stop. It was the approach of a man arriving at something he had already decided, the body language of predetermined conclusion rather than procedural assessment, each step placed with the particular, effortful deliberateness of someone monitoring their own movement and finding that the monitoring required more concentration than it should. He did not carry a flashlight in his free hand. He carried his weapon. Drawn before he reached the glass. Leveled before Eric had fully processed that the lights were for them. Eric lowered the window. The smell arrived before Wright finished the first step. Whiskey, not faint, not the trace residue of an earlier hour but present and direct in the cold October air, filling the car the moment the glass came down. The weapon was at the window, pointed at Eric's face in the amber wash of the highway lights, and Wright's first words were not a greeting or an identification or a stated reason for the stop. They were a demand. Both of them. Out of the car. Eric did not reach for his license. He did not move. Not resistance, the specific, involuntary stillness of a person whose body has received information that the mind has not yet fully processed, a half-second recalibration in the presence of something that has arrived so wrong that the normal sequencing of response cannot immediately locate its footing. In the passenger seat, Maria's hands were visible and still. Her eyes were forward. Her body had already completed the assessment that Eric's was still running, the weapon, the smell, the questions that followed which did not hold together, which asked the same thing twice as if the answer had not arrived, which moved the weapon slightly to indicate her and asked if she was Eric's sister. She was his wife. 3 years. The rings were in the light coming through the window. Wright's free hand moved toward the door handle on the outside of the vehicle. Not a gesture. An attempt. Maria's voice when it came was not loud. It was the register of a person who has finished calculating and arrived at the only available conclusion. She told Eric to go. Then her hand was already moving, not toward Eric, not toward the window, not toward anything in the car. Toward her phone. She did not call anyone they knew. She called 911. The call connected within seconds. And when the dispatcher answered, Maria Jones's voice was steady and completely specific, and it did not waver once for the next 38 minutes. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. Maria gave the road first, County Road 7, Caldwell County, eastbound from the Main Street junction. Then the location as precisely as she could place it. Then the description of the vehicle behind them and the badge on the man who had been driving it. Then the smell. She named it directly, without qualification, whiskey, present and immediate, on an officer who had approached their vehicle with his weapon already drawn and pointed at her husband's face before a single word had been exchanged. She said they were trying to get somewhere safe. Her voice carried no effect that could be described as anything other than precise. She was not performing calm. She was operating at the register that the situation required, and she had the presence of mind to understand that the recording being made on the other end of this call was the only leverage available to them on a dark Texas highway with no witnesses in either direction. Eric drove with both hands on the wheel and his eyes moving between the road ahead and the lights behind. The lights did not fall back. Wright fired the first shot from the shoulder before he reached his cruiser door. The round missed. The car kept moving. Wright got in and started the engine, and the pursuit moved on to County Road 7 in the direction of the grain elevator crossing, with Maria still on the line, still watching the rear window, still giving the dispatcher the information the dispatcher was asking for, their speed, their direction, the distance of the lights behind them, the number of shots she had heard. 1. She said it clearly. 1 shot fired at the shoulder. Missed. They passed the grain elevator at the first crossing. Wright fired again. The round missed. Maria reported it to the dispatcher the same way she had reported the first: location, direction, result. Her voice did not change register. Wright's own dispatch was logging the substance of her call while he was less than 300 yards behind them, his weapon still in the equation, the pursuit continuing north toward the junction. 2 shots. 2 locations. 2 separate decisions made by a man whose department was being told, in real time, what he was doing and who was in the car in front of him. At the junction, he fired the 3rd time. Missed. Maria gave the location. She was still on the line, still watching the rear window, still answering every question the dispatcher asked with the specific, factual precision of someone who understood that every word she said was being time-stamped and logged, and that the log was the record and the record was everything. The 4th shot found the car. 1 round entered through the rear passenger door. Maria's voice on the recording did not disappear. It changed, a shift in quality that the dispatcher registered immediately, the difference between a voice that is choosing its words and a voice that is still present but no longer choosing anything. The car pulled to the shoulder. Eric was saying her name before it had fully stopped. The trial ran 9 weeks in a Caldwell County federal courthouse that had seen difficult proceedings before and had never seen evidence quite like this. The prosecution built its case on 3 foundations and presented them in the order that their weight required. The toxicology report came first: 0.19 blood alcohol at the time of the shooting, nearly 5 times the threshold any Texas law enforcement agency permitted for an officer on active duty, a number that the defense's expert spent 2 days attempting to contextualize and that the prosecution's expert spent 40 minutes returning to its correct designation. A man who should not have been in a cruiser, should not have been carrying a weapon, should not have been on County Road 7 making the Decisions that County Road 7 now had 4 locations to account for. The body cam footage came second, for shots, for locations, the GPS coordinates of each one logged and time-stamped by the department's own equipment, the map that would go up in front of the jury later already present in every frame. The 911 call came third. It was played in full on the third day of proceedings, in a courtroom that had been quiet before the recording began and went quieter still once it did. 38 minutes. Maria's voice naming the smell, giving the road, describing the weapon pointed at her husband's face, reporting each shot by location and result in the same level, specific register she had maintained from the moment the call connected to the moment the fourth shot changed everything. The jury listened without moving. The defense did not object to its admission. There was no objection available that the facts of the recording did not immediately answer. The defense argued darkness, pursuit conditions, the physical compression of judgment under stress, the theoretical architecture of threat perception that had protected badges before in courtrooms built on less documentation than this one contained. The prosecution played the call again. Then the map went up, 4 pins on County Road 7, for separate locations, each one a coordinate and a timestamp and a decision made by a man who knew, because his own dispatch was telling him, that the car in front of him held 2 unarmed people who had fled because he had approached their window drunk and armed and had attempted to open their door without cause. 1 shot is a reflex. 4 shots at 4 locations is a record. The jury looked at the map for 4 days. Wright addressed the court before sentencing. He spoke about his father, about the uniform, about what the badge had meant to him since he was old enough to understand what a badge was. His voice was quiet. His hands were folded. He said he had never intended for anyone to be hurt. Maria Jones sat 12 feet away and received every word. She had been healed in the ways that healing from what County Road 7 had done to her was possible. She did not look away. Guilty. 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 3 charges. The same word returned against each one. Judge Patricia Horn sentenced Noble Wright to 30 years. County Road 7 looks the same. The grain elevator stands at the first crossing the way it has always stood, indifferent to what happened at its base on a Saturday night in October. The junction where the 3rd shot was fired is unmarked. The shoulder where the 4th found the car carries no designation that distinguishes it from any other stretch of Caldwell County asphalt on a clear night. The road does not carry what happened on it. Roads do not. They receive what is brought to them and they continue, flat and dark and without commentary, in both directions. Eric and Maria Jones carry it. They carry it in the way that people carry things that the legal system can name and sentence and file but cannot reach into and remove, the specific, permanent weight of a Saturday night that was supposed to be a birthday dinner and a road home and that became instead the 38 minutes of a recording that a Texas jury listened to in complete silence. And the 4 locations on a map that a prosecutor left on the screen for 4 deliberating days, and the particular quality of Eric saying Maria's name on a shoulder while the dispatcher was still on the line. The jury deliberated for 4 days and returned 3 words. The same word, 3 times, delivered in the flat complete register of a system that had taken 9 weeks and 4 days to arrive at what Maria's recording had documented in 38 minutes on County Road 7. Guilty. 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 Judge Patricia Horn sentenced Noble Wright to 30 years, 20 for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon resulting in serious bodily injury, 10 consecutive for official misconduct. The longest sentence for law enforcement misconduct in Caldwell County history. He will be eligible for parole consideration after 23 years served. 30 years is not a number that resolves anything. It is the full weight of the system applied to 4 shots, 4 locations, and 4 separate decisions made by a man whose own department was being told what he was doing while he was doing it. It is not justice. Justice would require County Road 7 to have been what it was supposed to be on a Saturday night in October, a road between a birthday dinner and home, carrying two people the way it had carried them dozens of times before, asking nothing, requiring nothing, delivering them safely to a house where the lights were on a timer and there was nothing left to do but arrive. What Eric and Maria Jones received was a verdict. And 30 years. And the specific, permanent knowledge that what happened on County Road 7 was named and charged and tried and sentenced because a woman in the passenger seat reached for her phone and stayed on the line. The story does not pretend those two things, a verdict and justice, are the same. They are not. The difference between them is the size of everything County Road 7 took and did not give back. Maria Jones still drives that road. If this story stayed with you, if 38 minutes of one woman's voice in the dark means something to you, do one thing before you leave. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell because the next story is already prepared and it carries the same weight this one does. Drop a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me what Maria's 38 minutes means to you. I read every single one. Know your rights. Build the record. See you in the next one.